for producing that service. If going into this competition, DoD chooses the commercial approach, those requirements will not be required of either party. If they choose the approach that they're using now, the requirements will be imposed on both parties. The systems do provide good data. They give you insight into costs. They give a uniform way of measuring. They help impose discipline on a program. There's a lot of value, and it was a long, hard fight to get those in the current program. It was not easy. It's not an easy accomplishment to do. After a time period where you weren't required to do that, that was also tied to these lot buys early on in the program. So it's reasonable why that wasn't required in the very beginning. So there's value to these requirements, but under a commercial approach, the bottom line is price, and those requirements wouldn't be required of either party.
Mr. Musk, would you concede that 68 consecutive launches is a great record?
I would, although I'd like to point out that there were two highly publicized failure investigations, one for Delta IV Heavy, one for Atlas. The Air Force conducted failure investigations. ULA has a very good track record. It is just not quite as perfect as 68 perfect launches.
Mr. Gass, you have any response to that?
We measure the mission success by our customers' declaration. And so if they declare that the satellite and the mission is a success, we use the same record. And why it's important, because our profit is tied to a mission success. If we don't deliver it, it's not only we forfeit our profit, but potentially get a penalty. So the declaration is about the on-orbit capability, and that's how we measure success.
Mr. Musk, in October 2012, I believe this is right, a secondary payload aboard a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket was sent into the wrong orbit because one of the 9 Merlin engines powering the rocket failed. What recourse did the owner of the secondary payload have in that situation to recover damages? In other words, what's next? What was next?
Right. Well, by ULA's definition of success, that mission was perfect.
No, that was perfect, although you went into the wrong orbit and so forth. You're
right.
Saying that's perfect.
So the primary mission, which was to deliver the Cassiopeia satellite, was 100% successful. There was a secondary satellite that was an optional objective that was not part of the primary mission. But as I said, if you accept ULA's definition of perfect success, then that mission was perfectly successful.
Mr. Gass?
It would not be declared successful. If that was a contracted requirement, we would.
He would say it was successful by his criteria, but you'd say it was not successful.
Right.
By yours.
You know, we could have a debate about success, but if it's considered an experiment and the rocket was supposed to perform all the capabilities and it didn't, that's a different kind of business arrangement. But in our measure of success, we put margins in. The anomalies that Mr. Musk referred to that we had on United Launch Alliance was design margins. The margins came into play, and we were able to successfully deliver the satellite. It is an incredibly risky business, and everything needs to work perfectly.
Dr. Pace, you have any comment on that?
I would add more from as a former analyst, with NASA, that getting detailed understanding of the prices and costs. Prices we understood, I think, with SpaceX. Understanding all the costs, I think, was somewhat more difficult. SpaceX did not have, when I was at NASA, the detailed level of business accounting systems that we were used to on other projects. So we had a very robust dialogue with SpaceX people, and we got a lot of information. There's a lot of cooperation. But I would have to say that really understanding all those costs at the same level of detail was hard to come by. And so eventually in some areas we said, there's some magic going on SpaceX. We don't fully understand, but we appreciate the results. Again, how much is the government willing to pay and impose on SpaceX on these contracts? If it's not willing to impose those kind of detailed reporting requirements, are they willing to relax them, on other players?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Shelby. In this round, I'm going to take what I consider, after listening to the testimony and reading the background here, the best arguments on both sides and ask you each to address them. I'll preface my